for joining us. I think we're going to get started here. We appreciate everyone being here. I know it's kind of in the middle of the day. And we wanted to just kind of keep this, very casual, very, informational at the same time. And so, match day being around the corner, we thought we'd put this together. Each year, the same thing happens, the third Friday of every March. As we've been doing this throughout the years, we typically get similar questions, similar types of situations that, that folks are in, as they're moving from one point in their careers to another. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sue Lee. I am the CEO here at Curbside. Basically, if you don't already know, Curbside is here to really assist physicians and those also, just within, within healthcare, nurses, veterinarians, PAs, the whole nine yards, really assisting in the whole home buying process. And, what that looks like sometimes is just a consult where, hey, maybe buying a home is not the right time, or yes, it is the right time. What are the resources out there? And just kind of, guiding folks step by step. And so that's what we do here at Curbside. Today, we are very fortunate to be joined by two, very trusted partners they've been working with Curbside for a number of years. So we've got Tal Frank. He is a lending officer with Physician Loans, which is now a part of Huntington, and Mark Casada, who is the president and realtor with the Casada Group. Mark covers a few different areas, including San Diego, Chicago, Tampa Bay, and Miami. So he's got a wealth of knowledge in many, many different parts of the US. But aside from that, really is very well versed in, how physician loans work and kind of how to integrate that and that whole home buying process. So without further ado, we'll let Tal kind of kick it off here, and I'll hand it off to you, Tal.
Sue, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. As Sue mentioned, my name is Tal. I'm with a company called Physician Loans. Our specialty and claim to fame is that we do special home financing, special mortgages for doctors. To tweak one point that Sue made, I don't act as a loan officer. Back in the day, I have a loan officer's license, but I focus on education and training and working with the Physician Loans team within the bank. And I will share my screen here. I have a few slides. What I did is I have presentations. As I mentioned, I do a lot of education within the medical community across the country. And so, I'm not here to talk about myself. We're going to focus on educating you guys, but I love sharing this. It tells you a little bit about how we got started or who we are. And so I start by sharing this photo that you see. That's me sitting in front, and you can see there's a lot more gray right now. So that photo is from many, many years ago. And I like sharing this because I'm sitting in front of one of my younger brothers, and this is at his match day ceremony. He's an anesthesiologist, and this was at University of Cincinnati. And those are our parents with us. And we had a mortgage company. The family had a business, a mortgage company at the time. And what we were a generic mortgage company. And what we noticed once he matched, he headed to Florida for residency, is he could afford the payments on the condo that he wanted to purchase, but the financing, there was not financing around that really made it possible for him as a graduating med student to buy a home. And we saw that there was a need. I mean, our parents had to get involved and, help him buy that home, which at this point, I think you guys would all agree with me that it's time to cut the umbilical cord from the parents. If you don't have to have them as co-borrowers on a home, then that is preferred. So we created a special mortgage for doctors. We'll spend a few minutes talking about that because, as it turns out, most graduating medical students need special financing in order to buy a home going into residency. So again, this was a family business. It's been over 20 years. And as Sue mentioned, we are now part of Huntington. We were actually acquired about a year ago in order to add to our geographic capabilities. So we can lend now. And we were just talking before we got started here, 47 states plus DC. And just one other quick point about myself, I like to share my license number, which is 6502. Mark, this probably means something to you. Today in today's world, loan officers have 6, even 7 digits for their license number. This means that I've been around for a while and one of the few still around after so many years. So I encourage your questions, anything I can do to help. Again, been around for many years and happy to help out. All right, so one of the first things I was asked to talk about is the implications of match day and what that means to you as a medical student. And of course, it has 101 different, implications for you in your life, if not more. We're going to focus specifically on what this means regarding your housing. And one way or another, now that you are about to match most likely, move from where you're living right now, you're going to have to consider housing, and it's either going to be renting a place or buying a place. And you might hear me say this a few times, and I think Mark's on the same page here based on our prior discussion where, buying isn't going to work for everybody. It's not going to make sense for everybody, and it's also perfectly okay if you're going to start out renting. And for many of you also, you may not have a choice but to start out renting, and that's perfectly okay. One of the things that I like to do is educate you and empower you so that you can make the decision or at least feel comfortable in the route you have to take or the choice that you have to make and not feel bad about it. Because for all the financial benefits that there are to owning real estate, and yes, there are, don't worry if you can't buy right away. Your goal during residency, you've got really one goal: survive residency, right? It's not about getting rich. It's not about amassing your wealth. And even if you buy a home, let's put it this way: if you buy a home during residency or don't buy a home during residency, it's not going to change when you retire or when you hit that $1 million net worth mark and beyond, right? So don't worry about it. The goal of what we're going to cover today is to help you understand the landscape, what your options are, what you can do, and if not now for buying, then at least in the future. And so getting back to the implications of your match, once you know where you're headed, one of the major things to consider is, what is the cost of living where you're going? What is the cost of housing? And by the way, in today's market, renting and buying are kind of tracking the same. So if you matched in an area where buying is expensive, renting is expensive too. There are a few exceptions to that. But those are the kinds of discussions. Once we talk about the lending, those are the types of discussions you'd get into with your real estate agent along the lines of what Mark will be discussing with you. But getting to this slide that I have up, I like referencing this. This is from a website called fhfa.gov. And what this website does, the government has been tracking home values across the country since 1991. And I like using this as a starting point to have a little bit of an understanding about the market you're walking into, what the housing is like. And one thing you can see here is that over the last 5 years, homes in, and this is just page one of, you know, they list like the top 200 cities, which is typically, you know, you'll be in one of those cities. And you can see most cities have appreciated between 40 to 70% over the last 5 years. That is crazy. It is not attainable. It is probably not going to continue at that pace. I don't think it can continue at that pace. But what this means is that markets that were very affordable are getting tougher to buy entry-level homes, especially if you're coming in as a single income household, meaning on a single resident household. Now, this slide looked very different, you know, certainly after the 2008 crash, certainly pre-COVID, but ever since rates were in the 2s and 3s, which really drove up demand, and an ongoing issue that we've had with just not enough inventory, not enough housing available. You know, it's been driving up prices. So this is a good place to start, but you'll notice this is still very, let's call it generic information. So for example, if you're, let's say you match in Chicago, you'll notice middle of the page there, you've got Chicago, Naperville, Evanston, Illinois as the metropolitan statistical area. That's a huge area. So this shows you what's been happening in general in Chicago. But then for your next step, you'd be speaking with somebody like Mark, a real estate agent, who will be able to drill down by zip code, by neighborhood, and really give you a better picture and more clear picture of what's happening in that particular market. So along those lines, one of the first discussions you're going to have with your loan officer and your real estate agent is buying even feasible? And the way I like to show this is through this Venn diagram, where for buying to even be an option for you, how much you qualify for has to intersect with how much you need or how much you want to pay on a monthly basis. And that must intersect with the home prices where you matched. Because again, if you match in a market where the local home prices exceed your household income as far as your ability to qualify, then the decision is made for you and you will rent until your financial picture changes. And if that's the case, that's okay. The sooner you find this out, the better. And then you can just proceed along the path of renting. And when you're ready, then you'll be able to buy. So I like to share that, you know, the city where you match and how that falls out is really one of the top factors in your buy versus rent analysis. Another factor is how long you're going to be in the same place, because the general rule of thumb in real estate is the longer you stay put, the more it makes sense to buy versus own. So for those of you that are heading into a 1 or a 2 year internship position, or if you're doing research for a year or two first, the overachievers who are looking for another degree that you're going to add on to your MD or DO degree, right? Just rent for that 1 or 2 year period. Don't consider buying just yet. It only makes sense to consider buying at 3 years or more, and 4 years makes more sense than 3, 5 years makes more sense than 4, and so on. You obviously want to take lifestyle into consideration. If you're of the mindset where you want to call your landlord or super anytime something comes up, perfectly okay. Start renting. Don't, you know, buying is not the option for you at this point because there is maintenance involved. There's responsibility when being a homeowner. Maybe you want to own, but not all the maintenance. So this is a great talking point to have with your real estate agent. Buy a townhome or a condo, see what's available in the market. You pay a monthly fee, monthly association fee, but association takes care of pretty much everything on the outside. You're only responsible for the inside. Then you've got the financial benefits, and there are financial benefits to owning real estate. We'll go through that here in a very, very brief way. But I want to preface it again by saying this isn't a case where I'm saying you have to buy a home at this stage for the financial benefits. And I take that one step further. My advice to you is that if you, along this process, talk to a loan officer or a real estate agent who tell you you have to buy a home for the financial benefits, that's a clear indication of just someone who's trying to make a buck on you, right? They are purely a salesperson, not necessarily trying to give you the best advice. And that also leads to one of the frequent questions that I get as well, Tal, my loan officer, my real estate agent, they're gonna make money on me. How can I trust them? Well, my response is my doctor makes money on me. I trust my doctor, right? Any professional you use from this point forward, that is their training, their livelihood, their occupation. That's how they feed their family. They're going to make money. That's their expertise, and you're using them for their expertise. But you're going to select the mechanic, the attorney, the plumber, the real estate agent, the loan officer that you trust. So, having said that, I like to share, the concept in the buy versus rent analysis. And what I did here is I compared buying a place or renting a place for $2,000 a month to buying a place that will run you $2,000 a month, and to show you the difference and understand the financial principles behind owning. And when people talk about the benefits of owning, what they're referring to, there's the equity that you build. That is your ownership in the home. So let's say you buy a home for $290,000. And we lend you the full $290,000 it's your home, but you own kind of 0% of that home to begin with because we lent you the full amount. So the way you build equities over time as you make a mortgage payment, the terminology, the lingo is PITI, the PNI is the principal and interest. As you make a mortgage payment, you pay down part of your principal balance every month. So in this example, over 4 years, you're going to be paying down $16,000 of your balance. So when you go to sell your home 4 years later, let's say that home does not increase in value at all, $290,000. You get a check for $290,000. You don't get to keep the full $290,000, right? First, you have to pay us back whatever the balance of the mortgage is. So you pay off the balance of the mortgage, but $16,000 you've already paid down. So that does come back to you. So if you've ever heard that saying, why rent and pay the landlord when you can own and pay yourself, this is where that comes from. The other benefit in the way you build equities through appreciation which is the increase in the value of home over time. First of all, never a sure thing, never guaranteed. And in fact, in today's market, homes are appreciating 7, 9, 12% annually. Again, that's not going to continue, and that wouldn't be right to assume that moving forward. Assuming a conservative 3% annual appreciation, it means that your home is worth $3,000 more, $36,000 more when you go to sell it. So that's money that you made on that home. So in this example, and again, it's very simplified, but it's just to illustrate the concepts here. You come out $52,000 ahead. However, and this is all part of the discussion you'll also have with your real estate agent, where you'll have to talk about what to budget for maintenance. One rule of thumb in the industry is budget about 1% of the home value a year. and can plus minus depending on what it is you're buying. The bigger ticket item is when you sell the home, you'll have your real estate agent fees. Usually, as part of any transaction, there's a buyer's agent and a seller's agent. You will be choosing an agent to represent yourself in this transaction. You don't have to pay that agent. They get paid through the proceeds of the sale of the home. So this is something you need to take into consideration 3, 5, 7 years down the road when you go to sell your home. So given these items that chip away at that initial number, in this example, you come out $23,000 ahead. And again, it's not nothing, but it's also not going to totally rock your world at this stage. And like I said, you don't go into a home right now to try and make money on it. If you bought properly, then yes, the goal is that you do come out ahead financially at the end. But like I said, the goal is to survive residency. So with that, we can transition into one of the other number one questions. There are a lot of number one questions that I get. All right, Tal, how much can I afford as a graduating medical school student? Most will be able to qualify up to something in the 300s, low $300,000 range, and that translates to a monthly mortgage payment of about $2,000 to $2,500. Those of you that are in a dual income household, so you've got your PGY1 salary plus another income, then you can qualify, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 plus, which is what's necessary. Let's say those of you who matched in, someplace like Tufts in Boston, it's $500,000, $600,000 just for a small condo in the city, right? So this at least gives you a high level overview of what price range to keep in mind. And that leads us to a discussion on the types of finances when buying and what's available to you. So there are primarily four types of loans in the US. Now there are a few other ones, but they're, call it, more rare or don't typically apply to you as a graduating medical student. And in fact, these four don't all necessarily apply to you. Most of you will need a physician loan in order to qualify. And I'll get to that in a second here, but a physician loan is a special mortgage just for the medical community. There is a catch. You have to have good credit. That is that product that I mentioned we pioneered, over 20 years ago. And so there are a handful of companies in the US. We're not the only ones. There are a handful of companies in the US who offer a true physician loans. There are many companies who will market to doctors and market what they call a physician loan, but under the hood, it's not. So what do I mean by that? Well, the vanilla type of mortgage is what's called a conforming loan. And let's say someone with excellent credit can put 5% down. Typical borrower in the US, they're going to look at a conforming loan. One way of looking at a conforming loan is that as a buyer, you conform to the guidelines established by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Who are they? They are two large organizations. They buy a lot of the paper. Well, as a graduating med student, you do not conform to the guidelines established by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, because some of the physician loan allows you to buy a home with no money down, does not charge you PMI, does not charge private mortgage insurance, but it has special underwriting that makes it feasible to buy a home given your financial circumstances right now. I'll show you what I mean in the next slide here. An FHA loan is a loan for those with lower credit scores, less money in the bank. They are a higher credit risk. Therefore, also the mortgage insurance is it's a higher premium, and usually there's some more closing costs involved. One of the pieces of advice that I give is, again, there are companies who will market a physician loan, but under the hood, it's a conforming loan or an FHA loan. I call those faux physician loans. There are legitimate, what's called first-time homebuyer loans or hero loans out there that are for first responders, medical personnel, teachers, things like that. Those are true loans, and oftentimes many graduating med students think, oh, I'm a first-time homebuyer, I should look at a first-time homebuyer loan. The problem with that is, again, those are typically done on the chassis of a conforming or FHA. So if you don't meet the guidelines of conforming or FHA, then those loans still don't apply to you. So what do I mean when I say most need a physician loan? Well, I'll focus on two things here before I switch it over to Mark. It's not that you have a lot of student debt. It's that you don't have proof of what your student loan payments are. So as a student, you're not yet in a payment plan. And then even once you graduate, you have an automatic 6-month deferral before you have to start making payments. So if you were to go to a typical traditional lender who does not have a physician loan, and you tell them, yeah, you've got student loans, they're going to want to see proof from your student loan servicer as to what your payments are. You can't do that right now. And that's going to be a challenge if you're trying to buy a home this summer. The way we get around it in a physician loan is we simply assume your IBR payment. It's one of your income-based repayment. Some of you have already had that talk from your schools. Some of you will have it shortly, but it's one of the payment plans that will be available to you. You can choose any of the options, but that's the one that we assume so that we can qualify you. The other hurdle has to do with your proof of employment. Traditional lending guidelines state that proof of employment means you have to show either pay stubs, which again, you're not going to have this summer, or a signed employment contract, which again, you're not going to have this summer. Once you match, you'll get a match letter. And oftentimes you do have to sign or acknowledge and send it back, but that's not an employment contract. Most residency programs do not issue you a signed employment contract until the end of the summer. So again, how do we get around this with a physician loan? We know if you've gone through match, you're locked in, right? You've got a job. We accept your match letter as your proof of employment. So, I created this as a cheat sheet. You're welcome to screen capture this, where these are the 6 questions that, or among the 6, let's say, that you should start with when you start talking to a loan officer to make sure that you're getting the right product and that you're not going to run into any issues down the line. I was also asked to talk about what to do and when, and this will overlap a little bit with what Mark's going to be covering, but your first step is you're going to be reaching out to both a loan officer and a real estate agent. Those are the 2 professionals who will walk you through this process. As for the timing, the advice that I give is any point between now and as soon after match as possible. This is a seller's market. In most places, it's a seller's market. They have the advantage because of such low inventory. And one way to improve your odds of success is to start earlier in the process. So you do not have to wait until you match to go down the path of determining what your options are. And in fact, you can talk to a loan officer, you can talk to a real estate agent, you can get pre-approved. You'll hear pre-qualified, pre-approved, approved. Those terms are used interchangeably. And see what you qualify for, talk to a real estate agent to see what's available in that market. And if in the end you decide it's not for you or you don't find anything, you don't owe either person anything. Anyone who tries to charge you anything up front, again, that's a red flag. You should not have to pay an application fee or be put under any financial commitment right at the start. So once you match, and you can start looking at homes right now, even online, in person. Once you match, you can get under contract, which means you make an offer and you sign an agreement to buy the home. But for most of you, that will take place in March, April, or May. to then close on your home in May or June prior to your orientation beginning. For those of you that will be renting for a year before you buy, the same timeline applies for next year. So you can start this process January, February of next year so that you're wrapping everything up in time to start as you're transitioning into your second year of residency. I mentioned you want to be able to trust your loan officer. Here are some questions that you can ask of the loan officer about themselves and about their process. You don't have to ask every one of these, but more important than their answer is how they answer. Are they patient with you? Are they responding timely? Are they truly trying to advise you and give you guidance? This is your chance to interview, right? You're interviewing that loan officer, you'll be interviewing the real estate agent, and you're the consumer. You get to choose who you want to work with. So bottom line, to wrap it all up, choose the right loan officer, choose the right real estate agent, get as much information as you can from each one to see if it makes sense for you to proceed down the path of buying. Make sure you're using the right loan so that things don't unravel a week or two prior to your closing. And doing it this way will at least improve your odds of success. Because I had some numbers included, I have to show a required disclosure. But again, when it comes to numbers and rates, your loan officer will talk to you about what the current rates are. And at any point in time, you guys are welcome to reach out. Feel free to email me if you have any follow-up questions, anything I can help with down the road.
I appreciate, thanks for all of that, Tal. I just wanted to add a couple of points is
Sure.
I'm glad you mentioned not all realtors and not all loan officers are created equal. And so that's kind of part of what Curbside does in vetting the individuals that we choose to work with and refer out to folks. And then, as far as like, going back to the timeline and, whether you should buy or, so those are some of the questions that we ask folks. And some, the other things that we might ask is, what brings you to that city? Do you plan to be there after residency? Do you have family in the area? So, and so, those are all kind of determining factors in, whether, one should consider purchasing versus renting. So, now that, let's say we've kind of gone down that road and, decided, yes, we've matched into XYZ city. Now we need to start working with our realtor. I think now is probably a great time for Mark to kind of step in and, and share, his wealth of knowledge with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Sue. Tal, also, I really appreciate that slide you had up with the different appreciation in different cities. If you could share that with me, I'd love to see that a little more. But
Sure.
My name is Mark Casada. I am the president of the Casada Group. As mentioned, I do service multiple markets. We're in San Diego, Chicago, Tampa Bay, as well as Miami. And those aren't just random markets. I've literally lived in all of those markets and moved from coast to coast. So I have gone through this. I've looked for properties in cities that I wasn't living in and, made some moves that were maybe a little too quick. So I know some good pointers and I can maybe help you try to avoid some of those mistakes. But one of the things Tal brought up was the rate of appreciation, and this is huge. Serving these multiple markets, you might see something in like Chicago, a suburb of Chicago, where we see the prices of homes. They are appreciating, but in nowhere near the rate of appreciation that we're seeing in other markets, like in California, for example. I have worked with home sellers and home buyers in markets in Tampa where they bought their home 5-6 years ago, and they're selling it for just a very small amount over what they had purchased it for. So when you pair that with the commissions to your realtor, your closing costs, title, and if you're using a physician loan with sometimes 0% down, you're not walking into instant equity. There is a chance that you might be selling your home if you plan on leaving quickly at a loss, which is never something we like to see our clients doing. And sometimes, it's important to advise our clients, this is your rate of appreciation here. I want to ensure that you're going to be here for a minimum of 3, 4, 5 years based on what we've seen as far as trends go for appreciation. So always something to consider. Different markets mean different appreciations. And like I said, Tal, I'm glad you shared that, because it is huge to consider whether you're going to be renting, buying, and how long you're going to be staying in this market. So let's talk about starting your search in a new city. Again, something that I have done myself. I've had some regrets, and I'd like to prevent you guys from doing the same thing. I am a huge fan of making lists. So it's very important that you prioritize the things that are important to you. So some of us want, everything in our home. Some of us want everything around our home. Very different things. Sometimes we can't afford both, right? We want the biggest house with all the amenities, but we also want to be walking distance to restaurants or bars or entertainment, lakes, trails. Do we bike? Are we fishing? What's important to us? Usually in metropolitan areas, when you have a home that's close to all that stuff, the cost of that home is usually a little higher, right? Is it okay for you to have a 15, 20-minute commute? Is a 15, 20-minute commute going to translate into a much more affordable home, right? So we need to have a priority list of what is most important to you, right? Is going out and socializing your priority, or are you more of a homebody, somebody who likes to stay home and read and wants the comfort of a larger home or different amenities, right? So something to think about. A 15-minute drive is not the end of the world to some, but some people are not, they don't have cars. They prefer not to drive. They're walkers, right? So consider very carefully what a want and what is a crucial need, right? Do you need a garage, or will an exterior space work? Maybe you need an extra bedroom at home or a den for your home office or your study, right? These are things to consider. And additionally, something that we like to talk to our clients about is, after you're done in this city, let's say you have a plan of staying there for 2 years, 5 years, whatever, are you moving into something that has an HOA, right? HOAs, while they're great, they maintain the home. Sometimes you get amenities, pools, those types of things. They can also implement specific rules into what you can do with your property after you leave, right? So as much as it might seem like I'm shooting myself in the foot, because I do, need to sell homes, I'm also guilty of advising my clients not to sell their homes. Real estate is an asset that appreciates more than most and at a more steady pace than most. It's something that I don't think most people should sell, and if you're able to hold on to it, you should. But there are some cases where you don't have that option. And the example that I'm getting to is when you have an HOA, let's say you buy a townhouse or a condo, they can sometimes implement these rental restrictions, right? So let's just say there's a rental cap in place. You move into a high-rise building of 30 units, and this HOA has a restriction that only 50% or less of that building can be rented out. Maybe they're at 50% and there's a wait list. So what happens when you decide to move to Arizona in a year, right? Are you going to be able to rent your place, or are you stuck selling it? And if you are stuck selling it, are you in a city that has appreciated to where you're going to make money? So it's always something that you need to, I would consider that with your realtor and make sure that that's somewhere in your priority list. Are you planning on renting, or are you okay just unloading your property and then moving to the next city, right? Also keep in mind that as you're moving from city to city, as a realtor in these markets, we are professionals, and we have a lot of, we're a wealth of knowledge as to what's in the area, demographically speaking. We know the makeup of these neighborhoods. However, as a realtor, we are bound by certain regulations, and we cannot push or steer anybody into any area. So if you do have questions about what's the age group in this area, or what is like the demographics of income, things like that, just know that we are not allowed to share that information with you. But I'm happy to share websites that will tell you about school ratings or crime and those types of things. But just know that as much as a realtor might know about this area, we are bound and are not able to share that information with you. Now, when you go to select your realtor, obviously there's reviews, Google, you can look on Zillow and see where people have sold. Everyone in this day and age has a real estate license, and I'm sure someone's going to recommend you to their Uncle Joe or cousin Jim. We're not all created equal, as Tal had mentioned earlier. There are a lot of things to look for, and beyond reviews, it is crucial to find somebody that has networks of homes that may not be on the market. As Tal had also mentioned, we are in what's called a seller's market. We have very low inventory and extremely high demand. People are giving up their firstborn kids to get into these houses, and it's become kind of scary to see how much our people are overpaying for houses. but it's due partially to where interest rates were, and mostly due to the lack of the inventory that we have. So with that, there are networks of realtors in the top 1% to the top 10% that have access to different platforms that allow us to show homes that aren't quite listed yet. For example, let's just say someone calls me and says, Mark, I want you to list my condo. However, I've got a tenant in place. They're not moving out for 3 or 4 months. I don't know that I really want to put it on the market quite yet, or we're not ready. We still have boxes everywhere. We got to paint, whatever. For whatever reason, they've contacted me and said, Mark, we want to sell our house, but we're just not quite ready yet. A lot of realtors have databases of these, what we call pocket listings. They're listings that are in our pocket. We don't share them online, but when we have a buyer who might be a perfect match, we can then pair those with our clients and their off-market deals. There are networks that we have access to in Chicago and in California, where there are different groups of realtors that will put these into a network online for our clients to see. In Chicago specifically, we have an app that we give all of our clients access to. If anybody is moving to Chicago and needs access to this app, you're welcome to email me. I'm happy to send it to you, but you can very easily just check on the app private. So it's like a Zillow or a Redfin app, if you guys are familiar with that. But in your filters and in your criteria, you can just literally check the box that says private. And all of a sudden, you'll see hundreds of homes that are not being shown on Realtor.com, Redfin, any of those websites. I'd say somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 25% of our clients are able to find homes before anyone even knows they're on the market. So working with a realtor that has a network like that is crucial. Don't just go with Uncle Joe. Find somebody that has this type of access. It's going to be very important that you can, if possible, avoid these multiple offer situations. Another thing that was hit on earlier was renting versus buying. Yes, we're going to make money off of your sale. We're going to make money off of your purchase. That is how we get paid. However, it is not always a bad idea to rent first. You know, it's very difficult to move to a new city and just assume that the neighborhood that you're moving to is where you want to be. It's important to kind of get a better feel as to, do I want to be in this neighborhood that has, you know, the nightlife and the restaurants and the boutiques, or that one that might have the same thing, right? They may offer the same things on paper, but until you're there and you feel the neighborhood, it's hard to make that kind of commitment. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with renting first. Just know that interest rates change, prices usually go up, and markets move. So what's available today may very well not be available in a year, and what's affordable today may no longer be affordable when you're ready. So if you are going to rent, I can't stress this enough. It is very, very difficult to have all the stars and planets align so that when your lease is over, the perfect home appears on the market. That is not usually the case. So it's a good idea to have some sort of an exit strategy in place, or to talk to your landlord or your property manager. How do I get out of this lease? If I wanted to buy something later down the road, am I responsible for the remainder of my lease? Is there a payment that gets me out of the lease? How do I do this if I find the perfect place? Because it does happen once in a while where things are just, the timing is perfect, but that's not common. So just have an exit strategy and try not to get in this cycle of renting and renting and renting because you're looking at homes a month before your lease comes up. Very rare that the time is going to just line up properly. So just don't get stuck. As far as a checklist for relocating to a new city, I think Curbside has prepared something for you. They've got a checklist. If I can say, if you have items that you're going to be giving to somebody and you're planning on, you know, driving or flying to this new city and you want to move in and have your bed there, I have been a victim of this myself. If you're going to hire a mover, there are $30 things that you can buy on Amazon. We've all heard of them. They're called AirTags. Throw an Apple AirTag in your moving van, in your truck. You will see it moving along the map. You'll know when your bed is going to arrive. Twice, I have had to move into a home and stop at Target to buy an air mattress because my car was stuck in the middle of somewhere else when it was supposed to be here 2 days ago. So just, if I can, I stress that. Follow your items, make sure that they're going to be there on time. And make sure that when you're interviewing your agents that you've talked to somebody about after the process. And what I mean by that is after the transaction has closed, right? There are realtors out there that are great and will answer all your questions and are on top of things while the transaction is going. But the second they get paid, boom, Houdini, they're gone, right? So it's important to have somebody that you've got a good relationship with and to start off your interview process by saying, I'm relocating. Are you going to be there to help me after we've closed? Just an example, I have somebody relocating from Cleveland to San Diego. They won't be here for a couple weeks. They closed a week ago. I'm going over there, watering their plants, meeting the ADT security guy, letting him in to put all the alarms in and all that stuff. You've got to have somebody that's going to be there if you don't intend on being in the home right away to get everything set up. Another thing, this is kind of a given, but weather. Pack appropriately. If you're moving to Miami, you're not going to need all your winter coats that you have in Alaska. Bring a couple, but storage is something that is not always attainable, especially if you're moving into a condo building. It may not be readily available for you. So just keep in mind, there are things that are going to not be necessary in the areas that you're moving to. I'm sure that's kind of common sense here. What else? Let's see. How to juggle relocating and starting your residency. So again, as moving from market to market to market and becoming older and older and older, one thing that we've noticed is that we have different standards for the people that we surround ourselves with, right? We need friends. We're social people. And it can be very difficult to have higher standards and not just hang out with whoever it is that you're meeting at work or wherever you might be going. So if I could, I'd recommend joining clubs. It might sound simple, but it can be hard and it can be lonely moving to a new city and not knowing anybody or connecting with somebody. So, whether that be, a mixology class or a painting class, or if you're into cars or whatever, there are all types of outlets that'll help you meet people because we are social beings and we need to be surrounded with people. So on that, I'll pass it back to Sue. If you guys have any other questions, I'm happy to help. You can reach me at mark@thequesadagroup.com. Not too easy to spell. It's right there, Quesada, not quesadilla, but Mark. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to help.
Hey, Mark, I just wanted to follow up a little bit. So, a lot of folks might not have the luxury of being able to fly back and forth from their, because they still have to finish up the rest of their medical school journeys. And so how do you handle house hunting when someone is, clear across the other side of the country?
Very good question. Thanks, Sue. I'm glad you brought that one up. Almost missed that. So yes, it is really important to be able to see the home you're buying, right? So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll FaceTime our clients, give them a good idea as to what's going on. But then when you hang up a FaceTime, it's gone, right? You can't really go back and rewatch the FaceTime. So typically what we'll do is we'll go to these houses or these condos and we'll even drive around the neighborhood and we'll record that. We'll record the showing. And then what we'll do is we'll upload that video to a private YouTube link. So it's not searchable, but anyone who has that link then can rewatch it. It's really important to have something that you can go back to and say, oh, I don't remember if there was an outlet on that wall where I planned on putting my desk, or can a bed and a chair fit in this room, or where we can put the crib, right? So it's really important to have something to go back to. Pictures online don't always show the story of how you get from one room to another. And they also usually don't show the neighborhood, right? So these are very important things to show, the area outside the home as well as what's around there. So very often we'll record videos. And then as far as having the time to come see the house before you close, that's very important. You're going to have contingency dates if you are buying a home. You're going to have an inspection period. In some states, you have an attorney review period. There are times as to where you can back out of the home, right? Now, I don't suggest that anyone just go into a contract with the mindset of, oh, I can just back out whenever. This is a serious thing. It is a binding contract. However, there are terms that will allow you out, right? So the majority of our buyers will do their first couple of viewings with a video tour and a FaceTime tour, and then we'll go into contract. And then I will very strongly advise that you come to the inspection, especially if it is your first time buying a home. Inspection reports can be worded in a way to make things look overly scary. Everything's a fire hazard. Everything is going to make your house explode. So it's really important to actually be there firsthand, to meet the inspector, walk the home. Materials feel different sometimes than they might look. You want to make sure that this investment is something that you're, solid about pursuing and moving forward with. But there have been very few cases where people were too busy to do that. And in that case, you just got to be working with an agent that you could 100% absolutely trust, or maybe have a friend or a family member come if you can't make it. But I wouldn't say that I would not purchase a home because you can't be there in person before you write the offer. Get your foot in the door. There's always a way out, right? So if you need to back out and it's not what you thought, you can always find a way out, just so long as you haven't passed those contingency dates. And it's important to have a realtor with a transaction coordinator who's on top of those dates for you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to just, the inspection, just being present. I have to say, just from our personal experience, a lot of times the inspector will even share tips and tricks of, kind of just upkeep and maintenance and how these things work and things we want to think about as we're living in the home, right? Check on this thing once a year, every 6 months. So I totally agree with you, if you can be there for anything, at least for the inspection part, is super important. And this is a question for maybe, either one of you. We always emphasize the importance of working with a realtor that has familiarity integrating physician loans into the offer process. Because, if, again, we are, as you, both said, we're in a seller's market, and you come to the table with no money down, no money in the bank, right? With 100% financing, you're going up against, maybe 3 or 4 other offers. How does that get integrated? Or how do you, maneuver around that? And maybe this is probably a better question for Mark then.
Yeah, and that's another very, very good question. So I've been working with Curbside for years, and I'm very familiar with how physician loans work. And I just kind of assumed that a lot of agents were also familiar with it. And it's, over time, it's become apparent to me that not a lot of realtors have access to these physician loans and don't work with physicians as often as I do. And when you tell somebody that you're coming to the table with 0% down, it can seem like, are these buyers qualified? What is this really going to close, right? So working with somebody that, first of all, has a track record of closing physician loans is certainly going to help. Especially when you work with an agent that has a reputation in that city. If a realtor has a physician loan, a buyer who's using a physician loan, it's very easy to say, here's a list of homes that we've closed. In addition, we're working with a lender that we use all the time that does all of our physician loans, or the majority of them, and he can verify how the process works. Many times, if we can offer a aggressive closing, Tal, I don't know what your standard closing time is, but in some markets, like in Chicago, a 30-day closing might be okay. In Tampa, it might be okay. In San Diego or in other parts of California, if you offer a closing with 30 days attached to it, it's not going to be very competitive. We're usually seeing people close in 10, 15, maybe 20 days. So when you compare a good lender who can move things along very quickly and knows what they're talking about, and I know Tal showed something earlier that it probably means nothing to any of you guys, but another realtor that sees an ID that is only a few numbers long, it means you've been in this industry for a very, very long time. And it means that you've got some experience and likely don't have a lot of things falling through the cracks. So again, I think just working with somebody who is experienced with this is going to know how to talk to another agent and how to present your case. And working with somebody who hasn't done this before might have some issues showcasing how this is an okay loan to use or a great loan to use, and why we are using a physician loan rather than a standard conventional or FHA offer.
Oh, great. Thank you. So we just have a few more minutes. I think there are a few questions out there. I'll just, throw out a couple. So this is for Tal. How long does the pre-approval process take, and how long is the pre-approval letter valid?
Yeah, good question. It's really not a long process at all. Usually, let's say from the day you get started, a business day, maybe if there's some lag time in communication back and forth between yourself and the loan officer, a couple days, but it's typically a pretty quick process. And the standard time that your pre-approval is valid is typically going to be for a 90-day period. And even if you find yourself buying a little bit after that, it's a very quick refresh process for that. But basically, to get pre-approved, like I said, you don't pay anything. but it's simply you providing, you're inputting information online and providing some documentation and paperwork to your loan officer.
Great, thank you. And then I think this will probably be our last question because I think we're getting close to the top of the hour. One person asked, they're moving from Boston. How can I find a lender or realtor from Curbside? A number of different ways. Go to curbsiderealestate.com. We have a link to a form there. You fill it out. If you don't want to have a conversation with us and just simply want to be connected, we'll connect you with the appropriate lenders and realtors in that area. Or if you'd like to talk with us first, get a little bit of advice before taking that step, you can go ahead and set up an appointment. There's also a place on our website where you can go ahead and schedule a time for you to speak with us, or you can just email us, however you want to communicate with us. We're here and available. We will be sharing this recording of this webinar with everyone that's here. And then we'll also be sharing, Mark and Tal's contact information if you wanted to reach out to them directly. But I wanted to just, thank our two guests here for sharing their time. And hopefully everyone found this super informative. I did. I always come away from these things, learning one or two more things that I didn't know. With that, we'll let everyone go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate being a part of it. We'll see you, Mark.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Mark.